and welcome to the June edition of the Nude Wine Club. This month we're doing something quite unusual. I'm excited to go for 2 whites and a red. Ordinarily we'd be doing a white, a red and normally another red or something fizzy, but just because it's coming into barbecue season, I feel like I've been saying that for 3 months. It's June, it's 14 degrees, it's raining. I apologise. I can deliver wine, but I cannot deliver the sunshine. So we've decided to go for 2 whites and a red. What you have today, or what you'll be getting this month, are wines that are really, really unusual. So we've got Pecorino, which is, I know it's a cheese if you've had a cheese from it before, but it's also a grape. It means little sheep. There's a sheep on the bottle, if you have a little look at it there. So a Pecorino. We'll also be looking at a Crete white, which is from the grape Azertico. So this Azertico is the most regal white grape that you're going to get in Greece. It's primarily actually grown in Santorini, but it's also grown in Crete. And then for the pièce de la résistance, we have this wine's absolutely stunning. Pardas is a producer, and it's from the Penedès, and it's a Bordeaux blend. Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and quite an unusual little grape called Sumal. This is gorgeous. So you'll really enjoy that if you're going to have, I would say, some big meat, even barbecue ribs. It's huge wine and it's pure instant gratification. I absolutely love it. So without any further ado, we will go straight into the wines. So the first one, Azertico, is the grape. It's from a producer called Lararicus. And so they've been going since the 1970s in Crete, but in actual fact, the location where the vines are located, there's been grapes there for hundreds and hundreds of years. So there's a really old history to that particular area. And in fact, the walls going around it date back hundreds and hundreds of years. Azertico is really interesting because if you have had Greece wine 20 years ago, I remember I had it only once 20 years ago, you would have had a wine that's called Retsina, which is made from pine resin. So think toilet cleaner. Not very nice at all. So Greek wine kind of lost its place and lost its reputation because you might like pine resin wine if you are living in Greece, but it doesn't really suit the Irish palate so much. So Azertico, there's a couple of things about the grape. It's kind of like a cross between Albarino. There's a little bit of that kind of aromatic flavour for it. It's a little bit weightier and it has touches of the flavour of Chablis because Crete being an island, there's this huge influx of sea breezes and the salt from the sea breezes leaves a little bit of residue actually on the grapes, and it kind of puts this lovely salt salinity into the wine, which makes it a really beautiful food wine because you don't put sugar on your steak, you don't put sugar on your fish, you put salt. So that savoury tone makes this really beautiful partner to have with a little bit of food. It's medium bodied, there's a good bit of weight in it, there's loads of really crisp acidity, and you think, okay, it's Crete, it's very hot, but actually because of those sea breezes, they have a really strong cooling effect on the vineyards. So Azertico is the grape, and it's probably one of the best surprises that you can get. It's brilliant value for money, and it is certainly the most regal white grape that you're going to get out of Greece. So what I would say about that one is serve it nice and cold. Hopefully you'll get a nice bit of hot weather, but definitely with something like it can hold strong flavours of pork. It is medium bodied, it is weighty, it's quite dry, but it's got lovely, strong, fruity, punchy undertones. Chicken, you could even have it by itself, but it'll really lend itself to being enjoyed with a little bit of food. Hopefully it's your first time trying a Crete wine and you'll be sold on it. The next wine that we have, I love the label, there's a little sheep on the label. So Pecorino, Pecora, I think is the translation for sheep in Italian. So Pecorino means little sheep. And the name for this wine, for this grape, comes from seemingly when the sheep are moving through the seasons and they go through vineyards. Pecorino as a grape, it actually ripens a little bit earlier. So little sheep seemingly used to nibble on the grapes. And as legend would have it, the shepherds who were herding their sheep through these hills and mountains and vineyards would pay the farmers for the crop that was eaten with Pecorino cheese. Sounds a little bit fairy tale-ish, but I'll buy it. So the wine is really interesting. It's quite ripe, which means it gets quite high alcohol. I just have a little bit of a look at that, 13%, not too bad. And so this is from the Marche region. So if you think of Italy like a leg, you're going halfway down the leg, and it's kind of a little bit near the knee pit, so you're facing onto Croatia. So wines that you typically get from Marche can be quite similar to Abruzzo. The two areas are side by side. Montepulciano is quite a famous one that you get from down there, Sangiovese. And in terms of white, Pecorino, it's in very small production. And it's because a lot of these older, more, I suppose, interesting indigenous varieties were abandoned for the big superstars like Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Cabernet, and all those grapes, Pinot Grigio, be a good one, that actually had good yields and coveted a good price. Pecorino doesn't necessarily covet the same high price. This particular one retails for 17 or 18 euro, and it tastes a lot more, to be honest. The beautiful thing with Pecorino, it's like Chardonnay in some ways. You can have it oaked or unoaked, young or old, with food, without food. It's an incredibly versatile wine. So this one, you could easily enjoy it without any food, but it is quite rich. It's definitely in the medium to full bodied spectrum. It's a bit more golden in colour. It's evolved a little bit more. So it's spicy and creamy and melony as well. It's really beautiful. And what Pecorino is known for are those beautiful floral aromas, which you'll get when you have a little taste of the wine. It's a real treat. It's really unusual. They're actually really hard to get. Unfortunately, the ways of Albarino's and Pinot Grigios and Sauvignons have, I suppose, taken a little bit of the shine away from these smaller native indigenous varieties, which you can get if you look out for. They do better on the hills. And so if you think of Marche and Abruzzo, halfway down Italy, right in the middle of Italy is that big spine of the Apennine Mountains. And so this is grown up higher up on the mountains. It needs that little bit of cooler breeze that you get from being at a slightly higher altitude. The Carmenuccis have been growing wine. Carmenucci is the producer, or have been making wine for nearly 100 years. So it's a long time in their family, so small family producer. For me, just a treat of a wine, really special, really unusual. And then finally, we have Parda. So this particular wine, and it has a sort of stamp on the back for organically farmed grapes. It's 14.5% alcohol. It's a big blockbuster of a wine. I would have a glass of water as well as your steak with your glass of this. The grapes in this are Cabernet Franc, which is a small percentage of grapes grown in the right bank of Bordeaux. So normally you find it in a Pomerol or maybe a Saint-Emilion. It's primarily grown in a much higher north in France, actually, in the Loire Valley. If you've ever had a Chamor Champagny, or or a Chinon Rouge, you'd come across Cabernet Franc. So it is not as full-bodied as Cabernet. It's a little bit more floral. It ripens a little bit easier. And this is in the Penedès, so down on the coast close to Barcelona in Spain. And again, those coastal sea breezes temper those kind of really sweltering hot temperatures that you get in Spain in the summertime. And then there's a lesser known grape called Sumol, which we've actually got a couple of Sumols. Now they always form as a smaller part of the blend, and it feels like it's quite a kind of a spicy grape. But this wine spends a little bit of time in oak. It's 2017 vintage, so it's 5 years old, and you know that little bit of age gives you those spicy, chocolatey, caramel, smoky flavors. But this is just big, dark red fruits, loads of them, loads of them. And if I ever do this in a wine tasting in a lineup, this is always everyone's favorite. So it's brilliant to be able to offer it in the wine club this month. So if you're 3 wines, this one, you have to have it with food. It's just such a big wine, but it's a giver. Every glass is delicious, so I hope you like that. So that's your 3 wines this month, and for the Nude Wine Club. They're all summer barbecue themed, they're all food themed, they'll all go really well with a little bit of food. The Azertico is the lighter style, and then moving up, Pecorino is a bit more full-bodied, and then finally the Pardes Negro Franc. So the Azertico kind of sort of Albarino Chablis-ish, the Pecorino much more like a big rich Macon, and then finally your Bordeaux blend.